It's the Dev Friday show with Mark and Tim.
It's the Black Friday edition of the Dev Friday show, which I think means they still have. I don't know what they're doing. They still don't do that thing where the video ends and they come back. It means my voice is 50% off today, Mark. That's what it is.
So does that mean I have to carry the show, Tim?
I think it does. We'll try not to. We'll try to just disappear like we did. Was it the last show that the internet just went down and up and down again?
Maybe. But I know many of our listeners, and we do know that we have many of them.
Wait a second. You know many of our listeners?
Mostly come to listen to you, Tim. So I know they're going to be
really.
They may be a bit disappointed if they had to rely on me the whole show.
No.
But speaking of Black Friday, that you bring this up,
yeah,
because I just found this before the show.
Since I did bring it up, yeah.
If you would be part of the online Black Friday excitement, I encourage you to go to Shopify's Black Friday page.
Shopify has a Black Friday page?
So go to bfcm.shopify.com. BFCM.
All right, we're going to do this here. BFCM. They're a sponsor, I'm assuming? BFCM.
Well, I used to be a customer when I was doing some e-commerce, and I did have a couple of Shopify websites in the past.
Black Friday, Cyber Monday, huh?
Which is interesting, is they put up this kind of live, kind of global page that they're making $2,500,000 per minute, Tim, in sales. But they do have this nice animation of all these sales going across the world.
I don't think that's actually. I don't think that's driven by real stats, honestly. So
why not, Tim? Can't you believe the dream?
Yeah, I guess we could. All right. So, yeah, that's fascinating. That is actually a couple. I think there's a Black Friday sale that I may take part in that comes from Shopify.
Oh, really?
We'll see. Yeah,
we'll see. I think the only Black Friday sale.
Apparently, Restream's 50% off today.
Oh, interesting. Might have to double up on that.
Maybe I should renew my whatever I got. I don't even. Yeah, maybe. So, I thought if we went to this Black Friday Cyber Monday 23, it would tell me what deals there were. But no, there's nothing there, huh? No, nothing on Shopify's not like.
Well, they do have a ticker at the bottom that could tell you the percentages of, like, say, belts, cameras, baby and toddler clothing. The percentage of sales that are up in those categories.
Oh, that's okay. So audio's at 50%.
I wonder if you can click on those and actually go to a list of stores that they don't do that. So it's interesting. Shopify does play this game of, like, their platform as a service, and you can't really access. You could search cities here. I wonder if you could actually search. So if I want to search for toys in Finland. Does it get? Oh, okay. That doesn't. Even that was an autocomplete option. It does not give me any information. But you can't really kind of drill down into the actual stores that are on Shopify from this page or their site, because they are just a platform. So, but it is interesting. Think about Black Friday, and the most probably participation I'm going to take place on Black Friday is going to Home Depot and buying a new outlet so I can plug in some Christmas lights, because apparently my house, since the rebuild, has this issue where those the outlets that has the surge protectant or the breaker built into it. Every year it rains a lot with my lights, and my lights trip the breaker on the outlet, and then it breaks the breaker by the end of the season.
So the breaker that's in the outlet. So you have to replace the outlet every GFIs?
Yes, the GFI. And so I had to go to Home Depot this afternoon. You have to buy it. It's not just, and I've done that before, it's not a big deal, but when the contractors rebuilt the house, they did a real bad job on this outlet that's outside our front door. And if I take off the plastic kind of fixture that it's in, it's, you look underneath it, it's horrible. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to do some carpentry to, like, make my own, like, harness for it behind my paneling, my house paneling, to kind of make sure it stays put. It's not a good situation, but that's probably the most amount of shopping I'm going to do today is going to Home Depot and trying to fix that. So sounds
like you need a 3D printer.
That would actually be nice, yeah,
to design. And I'm sure there's one of those on sale in Black Friday.
Probably is somewhere.
I'm sure somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been able to do one of these.
It has been. I
know. I was thinking about calling our show, instead of calling Dev Friday, we should be calling Dev Quarterly.
Dev Quarterly? The quarterly Dev review?
Having it like that? Once every 3 months.
Yeah. All right. So what updates do we have to do here?
as what we've been doing, what we've been working on.
Are you certified?
I'm still in the process of that, Tim.
Still in the process. This is the best. This is the best. This is
well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about today.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I know. I've been knee deep into the Amazon Web Services, and like I said, I'm about like 80-90% of the way there. I could probably take the test and probably do it, but I want to be more than confident. I don't want to struggle with it. So I'm taking my time. It's like, so, but don't worry. You will be the first to know.
I'll be the first to know. And probably on this show.
Probably. But I was thinking about, well, you've been doing a little bit of traveling, right, with the family?
Well,
and
yeah.
Also your PHP conference too. You did another keynote.
I did a keynote.
How'd that go?
Longhorn PHP. I think it went pretty well. Got a decent amount of good feedback there.
Is it online yet?
Kind of. So
okay.
if you look, I don't have the video public on my account. If I just
YouTube search a Longhorn PHP, I should be able to.
It may be. I don't know, but I took a clip and I threw it on the Twitters, and I think I even put it on LinkedIn for some reason.
All right.
People seem to be using LinkedIn, and if you go to the clip, then they'll be like, "Oh, you can watch the whole thing." So I don't actually. I made it unlisted on my profile just because I don't have any videos on my profile. So it's just like whatever. So here's a link. So yeah, if you find my link.
So if I go to your profile on LinkedIn
or on Twitter.
On Twitter,
you still,
or X.
I mean X.
Formerly
X.
Twitter.
Formerly Twitter. Yeah. Are you using X?
I'm not on it as much. I check maybe like once a week to see. Well, if there's a lot of drama in the world, because since we have been talking, the OpenAI drama. That's
my goodness.
And the coordinate. I was gonna say communication coordination that's been going around on Twitter with the whole Sam. Was it Sam Fried? Not Sam Fried. That's the other guy.
That's Sam Altman. You mean
Sam Altman? Yeah. Him leaving OpenAI or being fired from OpenAI, then going back and going, just the whole back and forth, with the board, with the employees, the whole drama that happened.
Everybody's going to leave to Microsoft, but then they're not.
That was interesting to watch on X. I got to admit that.
Yeah. Okay.
Like the back and forth that happened on X in real time. That's really what Elon Musk designed his new X platform for, was for chaos, for you to watch chaos in real time.
Seems about right.
And just to take it in. And so it was pretty enjoyable to watch. So I was on X a little bit, but I wasn't participating. I wasn't like commenting, or because I've done that in the past, and it'll just go downhill fast, and you go dark. You start chatting with dark people.
No. You don't want to get pulled into the comments section of the internet. That's the worst place to be.
No,
it's the worst place to be. But yeah, that was interesting to see him gone and then back again. I believe that's a Hobbit's tale. I don't know. So that, yeah. If you go to X, a couple. I don't post much at all apparently, but so if you go to my profile, you'll see I post a little clip of yak shaving, of what yak shaving is, and that's from the keynote. So if you watch the clip, then you can once you're in there to YouTube, you can click the button and see the whole thing if you would want to see the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. So when I popped on X the past week, I did see your family posts that you did.
Yeah.
I saw those, but then I did see. Yeah, the video is right below that. I didn't see that. Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
But yeah, we did some travel. The family was at National Bible Bee, and Ella didn't make it to the semifinals, which isn't. I mean, it's not like we were thinking she would make it to this semifinals, because there's, 120 qualify in every division, and then 15 make it to the finals. It's a combination of how well you do on a multiple choice test, and how well your recitation is when they ask you 12 random passages from a larger collection of passages, and you have 8 minutes to recite them. So we didn't think we weren't thinking at all that she'd make it to finals, and she didn't. But she was hopeful that she'd get perfect orals, which means out of those 12 passages, they have to say in 8 minutes, you make no mistakes. And she was able to do that. So that was really cool. That was really cool to see her on stage with a bunch of other people.
She's taking right after her father.
No, I was never good at
oration. Well, some would say you do. You are.
Well, but I was never good at the memorization.
You are well spoken.
I was never good at the memorization.
Yes, but you are well spoken. Some would say that.
Some
like me,
that.
like I said, they look at, if they compare you and me, like the Odd Couple. Like I'm like chaos when I talk. Okay. I'm just like I go back and forth and I ramble, and you're pretty on point. So.
So yes, but that was fun. That was fun. Right. But as you can hear, whatever the kids picked up, because whenever you have large amounts of children together, they definitely seem to swap whatever they have, and the kids picked up something, and now I have picked that up. So my voice is.
I know there has been a lot of either colds or flus. My daughter, who's her freshman in college, she picked up like a flu. And she usually gets, she gets like one kind of bad sickness probably about a year. So she had the flu when she was in her dorms and kind of dealing with that. And then, being around college kids, I do hear that there's stuff going around, but I keep my distance, even when I teach on campus. I'm still practicing. The class is mine. I'm still practicing the 12-foot rule from COVID.
Yeah. Keep your distance away there. You guys stay back there. All right.
Yeah.
So. If you have questions, email me, please.
That's right.
I will respond right now, but you don't have to come up here and talk to me. That doesn't need to happen. So.
Yeah.
How was your Thanksgiving, Mark?
It was good. We had a little bit of a smaller Thanksgiving because my mom is, like, talk about people being sick. She's a little bit out of commission herself, so she wasn't able to come over. We did have the boyfriend over, so to participate in the family festivities.
This is your daughter's boyfriend?
Yes, my oldest daughter. Yeah, she's her. She like
how did that go? Is this the first time
they've actually been
okay.
They've been together since she was a junior in high school, so they've actually been together for a while now.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so he was over.
Was it the first time for a family thing or no?
No, I was just making a point of it because that was the only other person other than my family that read. Like I said, it was a smaller Thanksgiving, and so the food was good. Melissa, my wife, did a good job cooking, and then I did a good job cleaning up, and so I think it was good.
Good.
Wasn't too stressful. Which you think about the holidays. That's the one thing. It could be stressful. Try to keep it as low key and easygoing as possible, because it definitely could be tiresome. Especially with you're trying to do a lot. But that's coming up with the Christmas season. Like I said, I have my lights to deal with. That's going to stress me out to no end.
You have lights to deal with today. You don't do the Black Friday thing because you wait until the last minute to buy all your Christmas gifts, right?
That's true, but I have been trying to chip away a little bit online. So I've been thinking, because I've been watching the deals on Amazon, at least on some of the Black Friday deals they've been talking about. So a couple of things for the kids. When I see that, it's a pretty good deal, we'll take advantage of it now. Because I am afraid of paying more, let's say 2 or 3 weeks from now, or stuff just being out of stock.
The benefit of I don't think any of my kids listening to this podcast is that I can say Walmart. There's a local Walmart that had a huge deal on Lego, and so we have boxes of it hidden away.
Nice. Wait, how? Like a huge deal, as in
50% off these
really
sets? Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You could tell I didn't see that. I probably would have just bought that for myself.
They were liquidating the stock.
Oh, really?
Like the pirate ship.
Why didn't you tell me? I would have drove to Hamburg for that.
Oh, it wasn't
for
Hamburg.
Myself.
It was even further north than
okay. All right.
But yeah, it was crazy. So we got some of those bigger sets. So
nice.
That's what we're planning on. So we got it all pretty much done, and which was nice. Which was nice. So
your kids will have a Lego Christmas. That's a good Christmas to me.
Yeah, I love that. I think we're gonna have some fun building some stuff. We'll see. So hopefully they don't listen to this. I don't know if they do. I mean, now I'm gonna have to be like we'll have to put this under in the edit. It'll be redacted. We'll play like some obnoxious music, and then after Christmas it'll.
Don't worry, we'll like we do always.
By the time I get this uploaded, who knows?
You'll fix it in post like you do always.
Yeah. It'll be January by the time I get this uploaded anyway. So what am I thinking? Anyway. Oh, alrighty. Well,
so one thing I was thinking about talking to you. Our title of our show is Distributing Your Monolith.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it's because we were talking about that last.
Well, I think I'm kind of on line of what I wanted to talk to you about. We could kind of pick this up today, because as I've been trying to transition back into the real world from academia, trying to get out of this fantasy world that I'm in and actually get back into
how are your coworkers
being
taking
a
that?
real
Are they
developer.
excited to see you go?
I'm full on honest with them too, because I'm like, yes, I'm I'm talking about it, and they're supportive. They're good. And like I said, I'm still probably going to teach 1 or 2 courses as an adjunct. I'll teach in some way after I leave, but so keeping good connections for that. But yes, they know that I'm looking, going to be leaving, and like I said, I'm scheduled to teach in the spring, so that's my plan. But I'm being honest, I'm saying once something happens in the spring, I'm out the door. So that's why I've been talking to them, kind of keeping them in the loop, and then
be like students would be like, where was that guy that was?
Well, I have
Tuesday?
Everything in place that if I need to transition 1 or 2 of my courses to somebody else, or if I could just teach transition just being online, I can work it out. So that's what I'm doing. But as I've been knee deep into the Amazon Web Services, because that's what has been my focus the past, I'd say about 3 months or so, 3 or 4 months. And starting to build some stuff on that again. And thinking about also getting back into the serverless and really learning more about Amazon Web Services, especially when their services platforms like their Lambda or their Fargate, which is their serverless container service, or just the different options that they have. And think about how that can build into one of the things that we have as developers. As web developers specifically, we do not suffer from a lack of choice, Tim. I think you would agree with that. Like the tools that we use,
the tools that
the options, the libraries, the platforms. There's too many to choose from, right? And then,
is there too many? I mean, there's a lot though. Yeah,
there's a lot. And for new developers, like we've talked about in the past, it can be pretty challenging, right? Kind of figuring out, picking a platform, picking a language, picking a tool set can be one of the difficult things to do. And what this could then lead into is that developers then develop one of the things that they love to be passionate about. They love to defend on X, formerly known as Twitter. Okay. They love to argue with people about.
Oh, so we just descend into why my tool is better than your tool, or why my language is better.
Tim.
Oh, they're stack. Yeah,
they're stack.
Yeah. Yep.
So this got me to be thinking about, because now I'm thinking, okay, I'm building on top of Amazon Web Services using either using Lambda, Fargate. Then I've always been using EC2 for either running web servers or for running database servers that are hosted on, like, say, a VM or a virtual server. But I'm thinking about the stack that I'm kind of developing as I'm kind of putting these pieces together. And I was wondering about, over the time as I've been a web developer, how many stacks have I had? There's been a lot.
No, well, I bet more for you than for me, but yeah.
And maybe that's my issue, which I've had too many. Because I know,
because you started in doing actually systems program, like operating system level, right? Database.
If you want to think about my first stack, Tim.
Okay.
It was just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript back in 1996, 95.
The way, was it Tim Berners-Lee? The way he intended it.
Yes, the pure internet.
Right.
Back when things were simple.
The way he probably intended was just HTML.
Back when we used tables for layout.
That's right. And
inline styles. Oh, which since we've been chatting, 2 things. I've come around on HTMX, which we'll get back to.
Oh, have you?
I poo-pooed HTMX because of the stack, Tim, and the serverless model that I'm kind of going towards. HTMX does fit nicely in with that. But
does it really?
There's a movement now for HTML only. Like trying to bring back mostly with inline styles. Like, let's throw away the external style sheets. Let's do everything with inline styles, HTML, keep it as minimal as possible. And let's make the web more accessible to new developers. And I can kind of understand the point of, if teaching web design, web development is challenging because you have to teach them, a minimum of 3 things like HTML.
Right, but when you do styles in line, you're not making it more accessible, because the only way you're going to do styles in line is with something that actually puts the styles in there. You're not going to by hand be throwing those styles in line. You're going to be using some type of build process that injects those.
No, they're talking about writing it. There's a project, like, as in, like, let's just, when we're using our editors,
just write all the styles every time.
Inline.
Every time.
Within the tags. Yep.
Within the tags. So every time I want the same style on my H1 header, just write it.
Yes. It's craziness. It's absurd.
That's insanity.
Yeah. I blame Tailwind CSS for this.
I was waiting for that one. I do
blame
Tailwind does essentially the same thing, but
because that's what they're promoting.
Process.
Like, they say, if you just use our nice classes, then what we'll do in the build process, we'll then just output all of the CSS into these are our own custom classes into your own HTML. And if you look at the actual output of that, is like your HTML is twice the size.
Right. So I was waiting for that one.
Yeah, but back I just started with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Started with I was always a front-end web developer. That's where I got started in web. That's besides learning about Pascal and Visual Basic and doing some programming back then, the web was always kind of
Visual Basic was technically my first stack, I guess.
Yeah. So, and then from then, think about the different platforms you use, from like classic ASP to ASP.NET, SQL Server 2000, then getting into the open source world.
But those would have been stacks. Like you would have had an ASP, classic ASP and ASP.NET that would have been using SQL servers.
Yes. Well,
running on IIS.
Running on IIS, you'd have your classic ASP or ASP.NET web server.
So two different languages, but there's your Microsoft stack.
With a SQL Server. I think they had like a SQL Server Lite, I believe. There's a SQL Server 2000. Yeah, because there's a Lite version you could use of that.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of .NET, ASP. Or classic ASP back in the day.
Right.
And then switching over to the open source world, which you're well versed with and familiar with, PHP, MySQL, the LAMP stack, Tim.
The LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP.
Yeah. So and then doing a little bit with Node.
We remember then there was like the WAMP, which was Windows,
Apache, MySQL, PHP,
PHP, and then
whoever ran that.
There's a couple other ones, wasn't there? That were like plays on that, like because did anybody ever take Python and throw it in there instead and be like, no, it's
usually the P in a WAMP or LAMP or XAMPP server usually stand for either PHP or Perl.
Or Perl, okay.
Yeah, Python I don't think as much, even though you could do that. You could definitely. Using your Python or your Apache module, and you could, have a Python interpreter.
What about the people that threw Mongo in there? That doesn't even change the letter. You know what I mean?
You have also like your was it Merv stack or the Mern stack?
Yeah, what was that one?
That's that's your Node.js. Your
okay.
Yeah, that type. Which I did. I definitely done some Node.js work, but it never.
What was the Ruby stack? Do they have an acronym for that?
Heroku.
It's okay.
Yep, did a lot of work on Heroku back in the day on the Genie.
They're still around, right?
Oh well, Salesforce has them.
Salesforce has Heroku.
Yep, Heroku's still crashing just like before. Yeah,
just like before, but just now on Salesforce.
Well, I turned off the alerts. It was funny. Like I haven't used Heroku in ages. Yeah. And a couple years ago, I noticed I was still getting alerts when Heroku was down. Because I had like my email subscribed to alerts
to their alerts
when there was like system issues. Yeah, it was still like once every few months I was getting like emails that Heroku was down. I was like, nothing's changed.
Like I don't care anymore, but okay. I have on my desk, which are not close enough for me to grab and put on camera, an unopened pack of Heroku playing cards.
Ooh, that is a collector's item.
Some legit swag right there. Yeah. All right. So
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and maybe that's just my craziness.
Go? You've never played in Go, have you?
I have not done it. I've casually taken a look at it. I haven't had a reason for it. Like I wanted to do something with it, just like with Rust, because Rust is pretty popular now. Everybody's using Rust for, but I haven't had like a specific thing. But going back to the serverless where I'm at now, which
I just need to know this one. Java.
Java stack. Java. Yeah, I did do Java. Yeah,
you do Java. You've done Java for native apps, like
I did the JSP. Android, right? I did some web work with Java. There's one client I worked with.
JSP. That wasn't real. Java, was it?
That was hard. Yeah, that wasn't. Mostly because somebody else that I was working with was managing the server, and I just had to do the JSP, like the front end.
Those like the weird applets that would kind of.
Well, that was back in the day. Yeah, if you want to do a Java compiled applet.
Right, that would run in the browser. Yes. So JSP was JSP a scripting language that would
basically was just like ASP, but it was like instead of using JavaScript or VS Script or
right.
ACE classic ASP, basically just is Java code. It's basically like JavaScript.
And then it would communicate, but it had bindings back to a Java web server.
Yeah, because you had to run like the Tomcat web server.
Yeah, that's right.
Back in the day.
That's right.
So yeah, I never
the
IT administration part of running the Java servers. I tried to do that a little bit. I was like, I don't know, this is driving me crazy. And I did have one project that I worked with somebody on that they handled the IT, the back end, and I was just doing the front end.
Did you ever write non-mobile Java? Like, so something that wasn't Android?
That's a good question. I did do one applet in the very beginning because like getting into Java, I did play with their applets. I didn't do anything for a client or anything real, mostly just some experiments here and there. But then when I did my Android a couple projects for a client for working on Android applications. That was with Java back before we switched to Kotlin.
But then you do Kotlin too, right?
Just for teaching. I haven't done done a professional app.
Gotcha.
That I've had on the App Store written in Kotlin. But Kotlin is a nice improvement from Java.
Yeah, a few stacks there, Mark. You've had
a few stacks.
So you're telling me you're gonna get on Twitter and you're gonna tell everybody why every stack is better than every other stack. Is that?
Well, the reason why I'm super into the serverless, especially when it comes to, let's say, if I want to keep my stack as start with the serverless and then scale it from there.
Nothing's named correctly. There's a server.
Yes, I know, but I remember
you don't have to manage the server, right?
But I like the idea of when I'm working on an application, not having to focus on the server initially.
Right.
Especially when you're first releasing it, because you don't know. I don't know. You're not gonna. How many users gonna have?
You're still writing a particular code, you just don't care about how it's deployed, right? It's just like, here's the code and here's how it's executed.
True. You don't care about the underlying infrastructure.
When I say deployed, that's wrong. That's wrong. Yeah. So, yeah.
But the one thing,
files, I don't have to care about the OS. Right? I just want to.
True. Yes. Don't care about the OS at all.
Here's file. Which, let's be honest, that's what Heroku was, right?
True. No, I agree, and that's like whenever I look back at the stacks I've used, the one that I enjoyed the most, honestly, was when I was working on Rails and Heroku. Yeah. Just because it's
gone, right?
Besides the fact that it wouldn't stay up online all the time.
I didn't mean it was gone. I mean, you just like hit a button and like you took care of it, right?
It was the first experience of like just doing a get push to my Heroku project, and then it just deployed everything. Everything was great. It read your configuration files that you had in your project, and it just did everything for you. So that was a really good experience. But like I said, but then you are dependent upon the platform, and like Heroku like to do, like to take a break every now and then, maybe like once a day.
Computers get tired. Computers get tired too. They do.
But yeah, going back to that idea of just basically just having a deploy, and with Amazon, whether you use the CDK or the serverless
cloud
framework
development kit, right?
Yeah, the cloud development kit or the serverless framework that Amazon has that kind of allows you to do a little bit of local testing and gives you some CLI or some commands to do some management of your configuration files and also like local testing and deployment. So it is starting to get a little bit nicer, and when it comes from a AWS perspective, and I do actually like the tooling now. Like back when I first got into AWS, and just running EC2 servers for doing very basic deployments. Was that I didn't really like the tooling that much, like the CLI or the backend tooling.
So it wasn't as easy the command line tooling, or you didn't like?
Well, now I do. Yeah, I've gotten into that a little bit more.
What were your thoughts on the web UI though? Because like I've done very few stuff with the command line tooling. Most anything I've ever done in AWS.
The web UI I think has gotten better. I think it's still. I actually prefer Google Cloud. Their web UIs, I actually think they're a little bit better. Azure's, like I actually think Amazon probably has from a web UI, their console, the web console. Probably from a design standpoint is definitely lacking compared to the other two. But then I don't trust Google anymore because of they kill off Google domains and everything else that they work on. So I don't want to use them at all anymore. Get scared about using one of their platforms. But
did you hear the sunsetting Gmail?
That would be amazing. They would have a revolt.
Heard it here first, folks. 2024 Gmail closes. So yeah.
We're not making it doesn't make enough billions for us to keep it on our
Bard messaging.
Lines, yeah,
it's Bard messaging now, and
well, how do you think Bard's doing all its learning, and why do you think that Bard was bad in the beginning? Because its only learning was probably on Gmail.
Oh my! So yeah, so you think the CLI stuff for AWS
it's gotten better. Yeah. It's nice. The one thing I also really like, which I'm gonna spend a lot more time on, is with the Lambda function. I could do like the custom runtimes. So just like I like to play with different languages, how I could do if you want your Node, if you want your Python, if you want your
so when you say custom runtimes, that's where you're saying I want this to be either the version and the language that this code that I'm uploading is going to be executed in.
Correct. So you can basically kind of establish what language version you want to use. So if you want to use Python, 3.09, or if you want to use a specific Node version or something like that, you could definitely have a set of languages. You could do Java. They did have a native or support or a Amazon supported Go version, but I think they're removing that because they're trying to go to more of having like your own kind of custom compiled version, which is the nice thing that I'm getting into. Because if you want to do your own PHP runtime, you could do that. You just have to do like your own compiled runtime against let's say the Amazon Linux version that the serverless Lambda function is going to run on, and then you could basically make your own runtime. And Amazon supports tooling for that. So you could bring your own language and then as long as you make a runtime for it, like basically just a compiled version of the runtime with their tooling, then you could almost run on anything. So which is kind of nice.
Okay, let me understand that one, because it's a Linux AMI, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you're saying I'm going to add this language to it or something like that.
Basically, just like you could run.
At that point, it sounds a whole lot like you're managing a server.
No, you're just managing. You're just compiling a runtime for it. You're specifying, okay, I'm going to make a runtime. This is going to be the runtime they're going to use. So when I'm going to be deploying my project, it's going to be using this specific runtime. So it's like a custom runtime that you're making. So think of it as like a custom configuration for the runtime, but it's basically
right. But how does that, like? Are you telling it to install PHP on this Linux AMI, or are you building?
In a sense, yes. Well, from a Go application standpoint, you are compiling it together. So basically, you're making your own executable that then it's going to run on. So when it runs your application, think about like when you were going to be running your PHP application, you could run your PHP command. So in a sense, you would do a version of that, but you would set up PHP to run and use it on top of like the Amazon Linux, operating system that's using. So you just have to set that up.
So is it like a script that says, pull this down and run make and all that kind of stuff?
You do that ahead of time.
You do that ahead of time, kind of like in an AMI, and then like
correct.
So the output of all these commands is then what?
Yep.
Okay,
there you go.
So at that point, it's like you're still able to say execute this kind of in its own. I don't care about everything else, but as long as I can have an operating system that runs this
and then
runtime.
Taking this to the next level, because what I do occasionally like to develop applications with a framework, like a small framework, a light framework. We're not talking about Laravel here. Talking about
is it Laravel? I thought it was
Laravel. Yeah. I'm talking about a Flask. I'm a big fan of Flask with Python.
Okay.
It's a very kind of small library. So
that's a really small. That's an API based framework, isn't it? Isn't it Flask or no?
You mean as to build APIs?
Yeah, isn't it?
Yes, well, that's primarily what it's used for. Yeah. But you could make it just for if you want to do a full stack server-side rendered Python web application. It does that
with
too.
With your
nice.
HTML, HTMX. What is it now? I don't even remember. Okay.
Because that's where I want to get to. Like, I actually want to deploy, working with serverless, build applications like I normally would do it with the stack that I like. So pick like your language, pick your the framework, the libraries you want to use, and try to do mostly everything server-side rendered. So let's say 80-90% of your application would be server-side rendered.
Then your dynamic parts would pull in fragments, basically.
Then use JavaScript for the way JavaScript was intended, for the client side, for the light client-side work that it needs to do a little bit of hydration,
just a little bit,
to switch to manage a little bit of the DOM, to make some changes when you need to, but then to do most of the work.
None of this client-side stores, none of this Vuex,
none of this virtual DOM,
React. What's React's data thing? I forget what's
virtual. The React
that stores the client-side state, because that's really what you're saying.
What's the virtual DOM?
I don't know.
You mean state as in like their
like Vuex,
like Remix or something like that.
Yeah, like a Redux or something like that.
So you have libraries you could bring into it, like other frameworks you could bring into
right that then manage all the state client side. And you're saying, forget about that. If you need new data, if something happens, just go ask the server and it'll
state be managed
back this little fragment.
State be managed by the URL?
I don't know. Should it? I don't know. So, I mean, I just gotta say how much this makes me feel like we're building front page apps with server side includes. I'm just saying, just a little.
Well, that's what, because what I was doing was when I was first starting to work with some of the serverless functions, I was like, okay, so I could definitely, and also the other stack that I loved using was, let's say, with Firebase or with Amazon's Amplify. If you want to have like a purely static, generated kind of a compiled, statically generated site with the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then have your whole application be built as like a single page application, like an SPA, a SPA application too.
Right.
That was also something I did a lot, and I actually preferred that. Actually, it's a real good deployment process. And if you prefer to do everything in JavaScript, you can do that. But what you're doing is you're just deploying everything in JavaScript to the client. And I want to go back to a little bit of where I was rendering more on the server and then just making the client as light as possible and only using JavaScript where it need to be for doing a little bit of the asynchronous data request and managing the DOM when need be. But also use a lot of API calls for that. Keep the API calls kind of light when you need to reference them with through your synchronous calls with JavaScript. So looking to see how I could do that. So also what you could do with serverless is you could also build a container around it, right? I could build a container image of my, so if I want to use, let's say, my preferred libraries, frameworks, I would have them installed inside of a container, like a Docker container. I could then basically deploy. Now, as long as you fit within, I guess,
that's still serverless because you're saying it's a container. So it's not like you have to manage a server.
So yeah, I could try to. You could definitely do this with just with the Lambda function. So as long as you fit within the memory, the size requirements, like offhand, I can't remember the size requirements, but there is like a file size requirement. Okay, make sure you keep the image under, and if you go over that, you should probably go to something like the ECS or the Fargate service. You could actually deploy that out to like a larger container if you need to do that. But you can build a small image for your application and then have that run within a Lambda function, which is also super, super interesting, because then you can then start to build like your applications like you prefer to do on the server side and then just run it through a Lambda function. And they have a nice tooling called the Amazon, the web adapter. It's like the Lambda web adapter. I'm not pronouncing the name of it right.
It just pulls the web request and that executes?
Yeah, so it's basically acts a little bit of a middleware between like the Lambda request and then your framework. If you want to use Flask or Laravel or whatever framework you want to use, then it basically acts like a little bit of a middleware between that to manage the request. So it makes it a little bit easier too.
Now those Lambda functions are in a what I want to say in a kind of request model. They're individual, right? Like they're not going to handle multiple requests. Request is going to go to, which is to me is fascinating because like that is, come on, that's PHP's model.
Yeah, exactly, I agree.
Applied to other languages.
I agree.
There's no shared state.
We're going back home, Tim. We're going back home.
What is this? This is like
come back around. Right, PHP had it right all along.
There you go.
Back home.
Heard it here first, folks. Heard it here first. Mark's back in the PHP.
I do and agree. And like I said, one thing I do want to do, and I haven't really played around with this because like I said, once again, it goes back to project, which hopefully on my to-do list is the Dev Friday show. What I'm planning to do with so we could work with you is make a PHP runtime for the Dev Friday show.
Don't even know about
so that we can run it with a serverless model, and then we could have her run it basically all on PHP.
I mean, other than the fact that I'm a huge fan of
sites because I like running less. The downside about the stack, that's one thing too I'm curious about, because I agree 100% with you. Like for certain websites, statically generated sites, especially if they're not going to be updated, going to be updated once a week.
Right.
Maybe that is the best tool. The downside about managing that is that it does require a build process.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
So we've been doing that yourself. Like if there's an issue with the build process, like if you can automate it with, let's say, GitHub Actions, which you're used to have that online now. I think because of the Gatsby version that I was using and incompatibility with that, whatever. So I had to push them manually now. But the build process can cause some issues. And also with these large JavaScript site generators, like if you have Next.js, you have Gatsby, you have Astro. Astro is pretty good, but they all require a huge build process. That's an extra step. So I do see the benefit of that, and I'm curious too. Could you have a little bit of the best of both worlds, where you could still use
that's
the
where your
serverless model?
HTMX comes in, right?
Yeah. Well, yes. Use it. Well, going back to keeping the JavaScript light and keeping it mostly with HTML and a little bit of JavaScript kind of sprinkled in for a little bit of the interactivity. But I like the idea of maybe if you could do a little bit of the best of both worlds, you can still have a distribution. So using Amazon's CloudFront, like their CDN. So have a distribution, like a static version of your site, and then you generate that with Lambda kind of sort of to build. You still have like a little bit of the live rendering when you need to be, when you do updates, but that can also statically store or create a distribution of your site that could then get deployed to CloudFront, and then you could have a little bit of best of both worlds.
And it isn't part of the build process issue that you're kind of raising here, is the fact that you have all your content and you run it through this build process that renders actual static HTML pages
or JavaScript that eventually renders out HTML.
JavaScript that renders out HTML that may have JavaScript in it, right?
It's a mess.
And it seems to me that maybe with the HTMX stuff, maybe I don't know, or just some real simple SPA-like behavior. What if your API is actually static?
Oh, interesting. Give me more. Describe that a little more.
Like I mean, it's not really, but it is. I'm thinking a real thin layer of like PHP that then says, oh, they've got all these markdown files, and or even there's markdown files. Whatever. Let's say what. All right, let's think of it. Forget even the PHP. What if the build process took a bunch of markdown files and assets and generated what is a directory structure, which is a bunch of JSON files, which are the API.
Okay.
So when you say, hey, give me the shows, it returns you back index.json or whatever that content of that file is there. That is the collection.
But then the client still has to go request that even though it is a statically generated file you're going to request, it still has to pull that data back in and then render it within the page.
Right. But then you need like a headless CMS type thing to manage your content. You're just like, no, we just throw files in directories because that's how we can create our content. We don't need all of that. But when it comes to, how is this page generated? Oh yeah, for sure. This page is generated by like requesting, because
the cost for that's pretty cheap, because if it's just a light file, it's just an additional request the browser has to make. That's the only
and you don't have an active layer that sits in between and says, I'm going to handle a request, I'm going to look at the data, I'm going to format an API response. You're like, why don't we just build the API? Let me take our source material, build what we know is going to be a non-changing static API. So maybe that's what we need to talk about. Maybe we need to be like not static sites, static APIs. I don't know. Heard it here first, folks.
That is interesting, because then if let's say you did build, so the serverless part of it, the rendering of that. So let's say whenever, and we could easily do, and that's one of the best use cases of Lambda is, let's say you upload a file, like a markdown file, to an S3 bucket, and then you trigger a Lambda function.
That triggers Lambda functions that then absorbs static data.
To read the file, if you're going to be sending the file to, let's say, a database like Amazon or DynamoDB or whatever, or just do whatever work that needs to do to then maybe generate another file like you're talking about, a JSON file that then gets stored in another S3 bucket, and that is the file that then's used for the request, the client side request to then get that data to the page. So it could be, I think that could be a great solution as long as the performance. I think if you're not doing that too much, like I guess if it's just one request and the JSON file isn't that big, I guess it could be okay. From a client side perspective.
Well, not like a whole, not a huge,
the other thing I want to do,
individual JSON files, right?
Well,
like that's for every show you'd have what would
the other thing I really want to do too with keep the service model. I want to try to make it as fast as possible, which you do have, which statically generated sites. But I want to do it without the build process and the stuff. Like I still want to have the speed of a statically generated site with some server side rendering when needs to be, but also have it, just like I said, as light and as fast as possible. So as long as the JSON API request, that static request to the static file, is quick, and from a client side, it could work, because everything's still just generated. So you're not like you're waiting for that data.
Right, you're not waiting to spin up a process to execute.
Which
a script,
that is one of the downsides too with the Lambda functions and with the serverless model. You do have some issue of like cold starts, which you can do some workarounds about that. But if let's say you have a site like ours that maybe, who knows, that might not be that popular. We don't know. That may not be getting that many requests, frequently during the day, or actively within the hour, or like I say within the half hour, then it's going to have to
warms down,
then it has to respin that process up, and then it could be a slight bit of which goes away from the fact I want to try to make this as fast as possible. But if you have a distribution on a CDN, then you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Right. So you serve your spa type, front end stuff on the CDN. Your API is pretty much static on the CDN, and then your Lambda functions run when you actually do things with S3.
Do the updates, yeah. That could be a good model, yeah.
To kind of like build automatically,
because that
API.
is ideally that is where you should really be using.
And
the
thing that
functions.
falls down in my mind is the collection side, right? Because if you're saying, I mean, we don't have that problem because what is this? This is episode 70. Pretty sure you can return a collection with 70 links. That's not a hard thing. But if you say, oh, we need to page over large sets of static data, like say it's a blog, and then that like the index for blogs become a thing, and I don't even know how static generated sites
they just take forever when they generate
because
those,
like every time you're generating every page. It's like,
that's where it does fall down. If you have a real big site and you have to, that build process is huge then,
but what if that was another Lambda call, kind of, right? Like where if you say, hey, I want from the client side, right? I'm gonna render a page, I'm gonna get I'm trying to think how we do it, but and I have some thoughts there. But like if you're browsing, if you're saying, hey, I want to browse through all the episodes, so I'm basically doing a collection paging type exercise. For that, instead of having to absorb a static collection of all of the episodes, which is a lot of data potentially to shove down to the client, there we might have an actual server-side script run to say, I'll handle your request, I'll parse it, and then I will build the collection response based off of all these static files.
Based on the static generated files,
my immediate directory. And then all of a sudden, that's a really tiny, kind of very focused script that says, all I am is I'm the one active component of this otherwise static content API. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
Feels like the way we did work, 20 years ago, but that not saying that's necessarily bad.
That's the point, Tim.
Yeah, we
had to go back to what works, right?
There you go.
All this crazy adventures in Node.js world. Where did they get us? I don't know. No, it's interesting. Like because, like I said, it's thinking back where I came from. That's why I wanted to talk about this with you. Is like thinking about my journey as a web developer, and then how I now I'm pretty old now. And thinking about trying to go back to working as a web developer full time, and what am I basically doing? Like I am using new platforms, new technologies like that didn't exist before, but basically the concepts I'm trying to get to, that final application, the final result is basically what I was doing 20 years ago. Like in my mind, like where I want to get to, like fast web pages,
right? Just taking,
trying to keep as light as possible. Yeah. Keep as much on the server as possible, less on the client, right? Because also, I do have a lot of battle scars with like doing a lot of client work and client side development. Is that dealing with all these frameworks, dependencies? You know how I love dependencies. It could definitely cause a lot of issues, a lot of pain, right? So I'm just trying to think if I want to be building applications using the serverless model, using it as kind of a foundation or starting point, but then how I then go. What I'm trying to achieve with that really goes back to just trying to keep it as simple as possible. Even though some would argue, though, going back to the monolith versus a distributed, just having all of your application on one server in a monolith structure, there's simplicity to that too. So,
and part of the reason though why we have client-side apps and a push towards more being done in the browser is though for the speed, right? Like if I'm dealing with an application that does a lot, right? Like you're managing a bunch of resources that are server side, and I want to page through them, or I want to manipulate them, or I want to drag and drop them. Waiting for a full refresh for each of them, and I know that's what HTMX wants to solve. I'm just a little like the one mentality is, well, we give that data to the client side and then they know. And as they manipulate it, they make API calls that tell them how to update it. The HTMX perspective is they kind of post data and then the response changes where it was posted, But like if I'm saying I've got two collections, or I've got multiple collections of books in my library, right? And I want to drag a book from one collection to another, there's not a great way in the DOM to say that because I dragged something and dropped it over here, a post over here should, yes, run out to the server and say, oh, whatever my UI interaction said, make this post to put this book in the new collection. Great. That updates the collection I moved to now have it. All right.
You have to do that with your own client. Yeah, your own JavaScript.
Yeah, but it doesn't delete it from the other side. It does, so that type of management, and that's why we get these single page apps, is because we're doing complex stuff. But I think
that's a good case where, like, yeah, you would want to do your own JavaScript to provide that type of functionality, but then it's very, let's say, it's very focused, it's very scoped on those type of events,
the type of interactions, right?
Because it is like event driven, right? You're thinking, okay, for this event, I'm going to write this function that's going to be very, very tightly scoped to just try to accomplish what you do, instead of providing this whole model around what you're trying to do, and then provide a lot of functionality that's meant to kind of interact with each other, right? But more like siloed bits of functions based on events that are happening within your application. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but
I think that quickly goes to this point where, like, well, look, that's reactive development, and that's what React, that's what Vue, that's what they offer.
Yes, no, but it's yes, yeah. Oh gosh. Yes, I've done enough React where, like, it's cool. I like it. I do get it. And actually at different points, it is kind of a cool experience. But then in the end, you're committing to that system. And you buy into that system.
I think
it becomes a huge dependency on your application. So, like, it's hard to just use, if I just want to have like a quarter of my page, I only want to make one React component and then only make that one component React. Well, you have to do a good amount of work to make that only one React component. And then you go back to, well, why don't I just make my whole page React?
Right,
my whole application.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if
it's better then.
If I'm building a thing that lets me manipulate like a book collection and move it, let's call it a book library, and move books from different collections, and
then you would actually be getting into more of the web component model, making your own web components, because then at that time you could write your own JavaScript into the web component, which is part of the spec, HTML spec for part of the DOM. So you can make your own components with your own JavaScript and to kind of manage that type of interaction. And then you're not tied to a reactive library that you have to depend on.
And still accomplish that, you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It may not be as clean, as good, and as nice experience that React can provide, but you're managing the dependencies a lot better, right? You're not, you're keeping it more.
I think that's like where the two different sides. On one hand, if I'm building an application like that, React might just make it easier. At the same time, if I'm building something that isn't that, then what in the world?
Yeah.
Just render the thing on the server side and give it to me. You know what I mean? Like, there's not one way to do everything. It really depends on the context of what you're trying to build.
It's interesting because I enjoyed my time with React. Actually, what I actually prefer to use React now is I prefer React Native more than React, because it makes more sense, because when you develop a mobile application, it's not like a web app where it's kind of it's a bunch of different pieces you have to kind of all tie together. It's basically you have like one project that's all kind of, everything's connected together, in basically one area that you're working within. And so I do like the React Native model and how that is kind of your interface to the native components, like either iOS or Android, how you have this JavaScript bridge that you don't really worry about as much. Let's say if I want to do some type of scroll view or some type of frame I want to get updated on the device, I can then interact with that using
the abstract concept.
Yes, and that is nice. I prefer that. And and then because I don't mind then building my whole mobile application as a React app, because in the sense that's the way it should work. But from a web, because we deal with so many different moving parts, and it feels like, okay, if you're going to be doing a React application, it is a nice experience, but at the same time, you are kind of tying everything to that. That's the way it feels like, unless you go into the React server model, which is also kind of interesting, but then I don't know.
Because React server is what, like a blend between, some of it happens on.
Well, you want to start writing your React code that's going to be generated on the server. So basically, write React components that's going to be rendered with Node.js on the server, and that will be outputting out HTML, JavaScript But then you can then also
which then
stream
once you're on the client side, then become actual components. That
which is interesting. But like I said, it goes back to, I do like the idea of just going back to simplifying it, right? I don't mind. I don't mind the distributed nature of these platforms and systems. Like, a lot of people prefer monoliths versus just, a serverless distributed system, because there's a lot of complexity with the, learning how to use the serverless infrastructure that Amazon provides, learning how to build your application on that. I know, because I've been doing the past 2-3 months. It's a lot to learn, but it's almost, I don't mind, because then I'm offloading that to Amazon, because then my application or the project, I want to try to keep that as simple as possible, in a sense, the actual output of what actually happens. And then, I don't know. Like I said, it goes back to the days of, yes, dealing with your server-side rendered single request applications, keeping that as streamlined, as simple as possible, because it was fast, or is fast.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, right? Like, as simple as possible. And sometimes it's not simple, but it's as simple as possible. But when we can't, like, don't introduce complexity that's not needed. Just because it was useful for something else.
Or we could go back to running our own LAMP servers.
Oh man, remember when you used to have like the WAMP thing that ran on a USB key?
Oh yeah, they still sometimes in computer science they still teach that.
Yeah, you have the whole distribution.
Yeah, you could run it on a USB drive, because they don't have to worry about setting up the lab computers for running a development environment. They could just plug in their USB and run it directly from there. Yeah, so.
Those were the days. Those were the days. Speaking of PHP 8.3 released yesterday.
I saw a note about that. I saw, because I am on the mailing list. I don't read the emails as much, but I do see the important announcements that come through. So what's new in PHP
8.3? I haven't looked yet. Let's see. It contains many new features.
This is an interesting question. So when a new version of PHP comes out, how do you approach it from your workflow, and also what you do with your company? Like, do you how fast do you support it or roll it out, or I don't know, or start to think about, do you wait till there's a feature that it has it's really needed with your application that you're trying to do? Or
that's a good question, because like depending on the state of the code base, right? Like what things might need to be fixed before you can upgrade it, that can keep you behind for a while. But I think generally speaking, the best approach is to say, like, once it comes out, give it a little bit in the wild, depending on your dependencies, right? Like, if you have dependencies that don't work with it, what's really complex is when you have dependencies that say, and I'll just use round numbers to make this make sense, right? Like, version 3 of our software works with PHP 8.2. but version 4 of our software works with PHP 8.3, but there's no version that works with both. So that's saying you basically have to update both your dependency and your language at the same time. And speaking of Longhorn PHP, which we were at earlier this month, one of the devs on our team, Andy Snell, gave a great talk on some of the tricks that we did to get to PHP 8 from PHP 7, where there were packages that there was no version that both ran on PHP 7.4 and 8.2. And he did some really interesting things, which was essentially taking the version that ran on 8.2 and then downgrading all the things that were 8.2 features and replacing them with code that was compatible with 7.4, and making our own version of the package to temporarily use. And that's hand waving a lot away, but he was using tools like Rector, which allows you to do, now that PHP has an AST, allows you automatic refactoring to basically say, oh yeah, look at that PHP 8 feature, do the 7.4 compatible thing that is then both compatible in both versions. And now boom, we have a dependency that we can say, yeah, we're ready to go to the version that runs on 8.2, but it'll also run on 7.4, which allowed us to, in production, have servers running on both at the same time, because our code base could be compatible with both. That
sounds like a good project.
And I completely missed the fact that I should have been playing the outro music. But
sounds like that's a good sized project too for him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Good amount
Yeah,
of
I'm
work.
sure that talk will be online. Eventually, once the conference gets the talks online, and it's a fascinating talk. So,
Well, maybe this will lead to one other thing I want to talk to you about, Tim.
okay.
Maybe we could do this next week if we do have a show next week. I don't
If we
know.
have-
We'll see.
Who knows?
Well, we got to start the Christmas music at some point. I missed that.
Oh,
so.
I need the Christmas bumper. Yes, that should have been today. What was
No,
I
it's okay.
doing?
We can wait till next
All
week.
right,
It's still
all right,
November.
all right.
I prefer to wait till December to start the Christmas season, even though
Okay.
I'm going to be struggling with lights soon.
Okay.
But how do you manage, or within your team and within your companies, releases, as in for doing a canary, blue, green? How do you do like your testing process? What does that look like?
Just push directly to production.
That's the best way, right? Just like cowboy, just like throw it out there.
Are you not hearing the music?
It was soft.
It was
soft.
too soft. It was too
Yeah.
soft. Okay. Well, I think that'll still work fine in post. That'll be fine. Alrighty.
So we can
Oh
talk about
boy,
that
boy,
later.
boy. So here's the post show. Yeah. Those watching, here's the post show.
Well, I hope you. How long have you been? Just because you got back from the BioB? That's when you've been kind of sick.
Yeah. So what have I been back for? I've been back for a week. Yeah, back for a week. So the voice thing has been about a week, and then I had a bunch of calls.
Are you feeling good other than that, or is it just kind
Yeah.
of the lingering congestion? That's
Yeah, it's just the congestion, and now my
it's always
voice.
annoying.
One of my pigs got pneumonia.
Ooh,
Best we could tell. I had to give him a shot of antibiotic. Got to give him another shot tomorrow. That'll be fun.
hold the pig down.
Don't hold the pig down. No. So I'm concerned. The other one sounded like she might have picked it up, but she sounded better this morning. But she's a lot more skittish. So our boar just hit him in the neck with a needle, and he's just like, okay. And
Just doesn't care. Just like, yeah.
and just slowly push it because it's a really thick. This my wife did this. So she's like trying to push it in, and then he walked away, and the needle got knocked out. So we had to replace the needle and do it. Give the rest of the dosage. But
so they don't care too much because it's not that doesn't hurt them that much. It's just like you just got to get in there.
He didn't care that much.
Yeah.
Now Franny the sow hit it, hit her and not hit her, but like poke it in, and so she's like, stop that, and she shakes it out. So we haven't been able to successfully give her a dose yet. I think I need to kind of build something to hold her in place while we do it. But yeah, that's been fun. I don't know if you can see behind me. I got the Carbon X1. So
the 3D printer. What do you mean?
Yeah, that's the bamboo. So you can see the Ender 3, which.
So what are you planning to do with? Yeah, because I saw. Okay, so yeah, that's the other 3D printer you've had for a while. What's this new one here?
The bamboo Carbon X1.
So what's I don't know much about them. What's
it's just it's like compared to an Ender 3, it's like you just press the button, print it, it's done.
Okay.
It does auto bed leveling. It checks the first layer. I've got the AMS, which is the automatic material selection, so I can print with different filaments and it automatically pull them in. So
all right, well maybe we could talk about that too in the future. Like what projects you have lined up for. You've been making all of your but besides the kids' gifts, you've been making all of your gifts 3D printed for family.
We'll see. So.
All right.
Alrighty.
Well, I'm glad to be back online with you. Hopefully you feel better.
I think next week should probably be better, and I don't think I got anything going on next week. So
I only have 2 weeks of school left, and it's winding down, so I don't have as much work to do.
Does that mean finals? You gotta do
I don't do finals. Yeah, no, it's only the projects. Each week I just we do work in progress reviews of their projects. So I'm just answering a lot of questions and helping them through.
Right, because instead of a final, it's just submitting their actual project, right?
Yeah, either an application or
which you can grade that then.
I've been doing it along the way, so the grading actually is not that big of a deal because I have a pretty good idea how it's moving along. So when they do their final submissions, it will take you probably about half a day or a day to do all the grading, but it's not that big of a deal because I try to keep up with the grading each semester because I have assignments each week and then I just check them off each week, and then so by the end it's not too bad. But so we'll finish that up, and then like I said, then I'm gonna be. I was talking to my one of my coworkers. She was asking how I was doing and what my plan was. I was like, yeah, once the new year comes, I'm gonna be hardcore each week. Applications gonna be flying out, so we'll see how it goes. So,
all right. See, I think like I said, I think next week works.
All right. Hopefully we'll get
First,
mine.
I'll try to get a Christmas bumper. Christmas bumper for that.
Need that. Yes. All right. Take care.
I already uploaded that file. Yeah, if you have the other one uploaded, so I'll try to get them both
Yep.
put up.
All right. I'll get this
or
right now.
sometime today.